Now, the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNradio.com.
All right, guys. Now, we're at that time of year, right? You know what time of year that is. That's the time of year where there's really not that much going on in the sports world. Now, this is a very interesting pickle that we wind up in here on the right time, because when there are things to talk about in the sports world, they like to broadcast them on ESPN Radio at night. But when there's nothing going on, there's nothing to put on ESPN Radio. So what do they put on ESPN Radio? They put me on to talk about the nothing that is going on. That's my life, right? It's a bit of a magic trick, but somehow I'm going to find a way. It was a lot easier back when I used to work on satellite radio and I could cuss. But hey, even within the standards of decency that the FCC and the Walt Disney Company have put before me, we are going to get you guys all excited about what's going on in sports. And you know what's going on in sports right now? That's right. Baseball. You guys ready? Excited? Charged up? Right? Oh, come on, man. Now, look, here's the thing. I know there are lots of baseball fans. I still consider myself a baseball fan. I think there are a lot of people who are like me, where we consider ourselves to be baseball fans. We just don't actually watch that much baseball, right? And it's an unfortunate situation that baseball winds up in. Like, the NBA ran all the way through June. We had the free agency. Football's going to start getting itself percolating again around August. And July is the time where baseball has the world to itself. It's also the time when they play their most irrelevant games, right? Like, no matter how big a fan of baseball you are, you have to agree upon that. It's kind of difficult. But I know a lot of you guys have not been paying much attention to baseball because you've been preoccupied with other things. So I took a little bit of time today to just kind of scan through some things and get you guys ready for what's going on in baseball. And I'm going to warn you guys, some of the things are going to surprise you, okay? First of all, the Houston Astros are in first place. That's right. The Houston Astros, who were drawing zeros on the ratings in television as recently as the 2013 season, caused by a few factors, zero nonetheless, right? Why were they drawing zero? Because they were awful. Well, guess what? They are leading the American League West. Yes, I know. Some of you think I just made an error, but I did not. Since the last time you paid attention to the Astros, they moved to the American League. Yeah, I grew up in Houston. It's crazy to me, too. But they're in the American League. And let me tell you something else about the Astros I didn't know about. They got a dude on their team. Who just called me? Okay. We got a dude on their team. What's his name? Dallas Keuchel. Dude, I had not heard of him until a few months ago. Apparently, he's the best pitcher in the American League. Keuchel. Sorry. Got him mistaken. Keuchel. Well, he's the best pitcher in the American League. Getting you guys caught up. I saw something else today when I was checking the stats. Are you familiar with Nolan Arenado? I was unfamiliar with him, but apparently he's second in the National League in RBIs. Yeah. And by the way, I don't feel bad about doing this segment displaying my ignorance of what's going on in baseball right now to you. Because when I do the Levitard show, we sit around and start asking who guys played for. Like, you could pull up any team in the major leagues, and you ask any of us to start naming players on the team in a circle. And it never went around very long. I want to spare you from the embarrassment that I'm showing you right now. I'm just here to help, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of being here to help, somebody helped the Mets out. They're actually good. They can't score any runs necessarily, but I looked up and the Mets were good. That hasn't happened in quite a while. The Cubs are good too. Yeah. It's a backward sort of world. The Cubs are good, but the Cubs are good in a somewhat torturous way. Like, they might win the wild card. They have a chance at that. But the Cubs are 8 games over 500, which, like, for any other team is like being, like, 40 games over 500. Anyway, they're 8 games over 500 and 8.5 games out of first place. But I think that's cause for celebration, especially considering the fact that this year began with the Cubs figuring out a way to mess up the only thing that you would think that they could not mess up, which was Wrigley Field. But it's cool. Wrigley Field, back in the game. Speaking of being back in the game, did you guys know that Albert Pujols is good again? I feel as though you have been paying attention to baseball recently enough to know that this Albert Pujols for the Angels, well, instead of looking like Albert Pujols, he looked like somebody who signed with the Angels. I'm not sure if you guys are very familiar with your baseball history, but you can take this back about 40 years. I used to call the Angels, whether they were the California Angels, the Los Angeles Angels, the Anaheim Angels, whatever name they were going by at the time, I used to say, me and a buddy of mine used to say that that was the place where free agents go to die. And the problem was we had to stop and look back and realize that it's a little bit distasteful to say that's the place where free agents go to die when, like, we could actually point to guys who died, right? So we cut that out. But there is a history of underperformance with guys who go sign with the Angels in free agency. And Albert Pujols was one of them. But check this. I am fascinated by what Albert Pujols is doing. Like, I've actually been paying attention to this for a little while. Albert Pujols has hit 25 home runs this year. He has hit 25 home runs this year. And so we're all like, man, Albert Pujols is having a great year. Albert Pujols is out here tearing it up. I'm not sure I've ever quite seen anything like this happen with a guy, especially as good as Pujols. Like, he's hitting more home runs, and that's like the only thing that he's doing that's different or that's like markedly improved. Like the Albert Pujols, they hit 300 all those years in St. Louis. Yo, he's still down there hitting 265. Like the 1,000 OPS Albert Pujols, nah. More like 894. He's getting on base at 337. Like, this is not the Albert Pujols that we've seen. But suddenly this year, he just went back to hitting home runs again, right? Albert Pujols has 25 home runs this year. Do you know how many doubles Albert Pujols has? 12. It's basically now, Albert Pujols is damn near becoming Dave Kingman to us now. If I don't hit a home run, I don't understand what the point is. Like, that's all you're getting at this point. That's the craziest thing for me to look up and see. Like, when you go, I'm doing this right now, of course. You pull up a list of Pujols, his historical stats, and the first 10 years of Albert Pujols' career are just so unfair, right? That last year in St. Louis, not so great. Then after that, it kind of turned into what it was. But you look up, and Albert Pujols at age 30 walks 103 times, strikes out 76. Albert Pujols has only walked 29 times. 29 times. They are walking people to get to Albert Pujols. I don't care if he's Mike Trout or not. You are in a world where Mike Trout gets intentionally walked because they're like, nah, we'll go face Pujols. And all Pujols has just decided to do is just hit a bunch of home runs. That's what he's got, home runs. Anyway, that's everything I know about the baseball season. I thought I could pack it all into one segment. We could learn the rest together.
Bomani.
As some of you may have known, I had a very interesting afternoon involving a discussion that I had about Russell Wilson and, that thing came up on television today. Now, if you don't know what that thing is, I feel like, okay, so Russell Wilson is dating Sierra, right? And, very few of us saw that coming. But he is dating Sierra. That has captured a level of fascination among people because, well, we didn't see that coming. Anyway, Russell Wilson wound up talking to some minister of some sort, and there's a camera there, and I'm guessing he knows there's a camera there and all of that, but they're talking about faith and stuff, right? And so Russell Wilson is talking to the man, and he says that, he's with Sierra, she's beautiful, he thinks she's wonderful, all these things. And he said he's with her one day, they're in a hotel room, or they were in a room, she was changing clothes. Either way, she's in a room. It's like some Eric Clapton Wonderful Tonight type stuff, right? And so he's looking at her, and he says that while he's looking at her, God talked to him. And honestly, when when it happens and you're just doing that, and God comes and talks to you and doesn't talk to anybody else in the room, it's not God, it's God. So God came and talked to him, and God told him that he was to lead Sierra. Right. And so he looks at Sierra and he tells her, how'd you feel if we got all that other stuff off the table and we just live like Jesus would want us to live? And he was talking about sex, and she said that she was okay with that. And, you know, he even told the people there, he said, look, I'm not going to lie, it's hard and everything else. I'm going to need you to pray for me and everything else. But boom, just like that, Russell Wilson told that world that he and his girlfriend are not having sex. And now all of us know that he and his girlfriend are not having sex. And to be honest, he and his girlfriend not having sex isn't really any of our business. And there's really only one reason that we talk about the fact that Russell Wilson and his girlfriend are not having sex. You know what the reason is that we talk about the fact that Russell Wilson and his girlfriend aren't having sex? It's because we seen her videos. Like, that's the reason that we're having this discussion. We've been along for this ride with Sierra for quite a while. Speaking of ride, it's the video for ride. Okay? If Russell Wilson was dating a woman that was not like publicly sexy, because that's kind of part of the job that she does, we're not having this discussion. Like if Russell Wilson is talking about some girlfriend that he has that we're unaware of, this never makes the news. Like all these questions that have come up about this are basically in one way or another, can you believe that this dude is with Sierra? Yeah, and he say they not. Right. I don't know what he's talking about neither. And that is where this discussion begins. Can we all agree upon that? We're not talking about this if Russell Wilson got himself into a relationship with, say, Adele. Just as an example, do you think we're having this discussion if he's in a relationship with Adele? No, probably not. All right. So anyway, here we are. Now, the question I have about this is, I wonder how aware Russell Wilson was that the world would find out about this. Because, I mean, this is the truth. I talked to a couple NFL players about this today who said that they felt like this made him seem to be phony because they're just not believing it. For whatever reason, they're just not believing it. And I'm not so sure that he was so calculating as to understand that, like, the entire world was going to wind up seeing this. I don't think that's what he thought was going to happen. Because here we are. And let me tell you something. The reason I don't think that he thought that this was going to happen is I don't care how dedicated to his convictions he is. He don't want to turn on the radio right now and listen to me talk about all that sex he is not having with Sierra. Right? Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that, right? I think he thought he was doing, you know, in a religious setting, and that's what people do. They get up and they tell their business to each other so that other people can learn from the next man's business, and then, you know, you become better people as a result. Like, that's what I think was on his mind. But, man, let me tell you something. It is very, very interesting when you talk about these things on television. People get very, 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 very charged up by this topic and charged up by this idea, which I find, I don't want to say I find it to be strange necessarily, but the fact that this has become such a big thing is interesting because people are getting there for totally different reasons. Now, look, I'll be the first person to tell you. I'm here because I think the idea of getting divorced so that I could not sleep with Sierra is hustling backwards. That's me. That's what I think. And if you don't agree with me about that, you are certainly entitled to your own beliefs. But then there's the people who come up and they hear Russell Wilson say that, and they're cheering Russell Wilson on, and they're like, yeah, way to go, Russell. Hey, look, don't put that kind of pressure on that, man. Like, I feel like if you really support what Russell Wilson's doing, I feel like he's made a pretty significant undertaking in the very beginning by even trying to do this, right? Trying to do this. And here's why I say trying to do this. Everybody extrapolated something out of those Russell Wilson quotes that isn't there. And what they extrapolated was the idea that those two had not slept together. When Russell Wilson never said that. Russell Wilson said that he's in her dressing room and it hit him and he said, let's take all that stuff off the table, which sounds to me like that stuff was on the table in the first place. How'd that stuff get on the table in the first place? Right. All right. So my man had this epiphany and he decided this is what it's going to be. But I guarantee you, here's how I can tell you I know that Russell Wilson didn't want everybody to find out about this. Ask Barry Sanders about how this sort of thing works out. Barry Sanders, when he hit the league, Dwight Howard on the same list. Public declarations of your chastity, Dude, you can't win because, look, I don't care what you believe. You fighting the odds. Like, no matter who you are, you're fighting the odds. So once the world finds out about this, like once the world's on it, we then wind up being way too in your business. And then if you wind up slipping like a human being tends to do, they going to wind up judging you. I ain't judging you, Russ. Not one single bit. I don't really understand what you're trying to prove right now, but hey, it's not for me to understand, I suppose. Right? It's not for me to get. But everybody paying attention to this story needs to get, like, honest with themselves about the fact that this is only a discussion because very few of us who are attracted to women would, like, even consider what is being discussed here. That's why we're here. Everybody's like, would you do that? Right? Like, are you kidding me? And so I said on TV that I found, like, the whole notion of, like, this nobility and chastity to be stupid, right? I said that. I have this dilemma, right? And I'm asking you guys. Like, I just want to know. You guys let me know because I need some help with this. What are you supposed to do when you think something is stupid, but people really, 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 really believe it, and your job is to say what you think? Right? Because I'm trying to figure that out. Because I don't want to hurt everybody's feelings, right? I don't want everybody to feel bad about this. So, like, how do you say that you think something is stupid without just infuriating everybody when you get paid to say things are stupid when you think that they're stupid? Like, I've yet to be able to figure that out, right? So, like, if any of you guys come up with a solution on that one, like, you guys let me know. Because I feel like anytime there's a discussion that comes up about anybody and the sex they're not having, it's like you're supposed to jump up and you're supposed to be like, well, I applaud them for doing the right thing. I don't. Like, if that's what he wants to do, that's fine, but I ain't giving him no dap for it. Like when BYU had that situation where they would put that boy off the team because he got caught having sex. And, you know, it was like, well, you know, you have to applaud them for trying to get people to do the right thing. Hell no. I ain't applauding that. And don't applaud me. Like, no, I'm not doing that. So I need you guys to let me know. Help me help you. Let me know what I'm supposed to do in a situation like that. Because all I see is Russell Wilson tells world he's not having sex with Sierra. And on every level, all I hear is Russell Wilson is hustling backwards.
Bomani.
So, you know, you guys know Jason Pierre-Paul had his situation down here in Miami with, you know, the fireworks. I have long contended that I would love to see what percentage of disciplinary claims or anything else in the NFL would start with, so I was in Miami, right? Because Miami kind of seems to be a magnet for these things, for whatever reason. Did you see the story about the dude, Andrew Quarles, the tight end for the Packers? And I got to tell you, I have no idea how in the world Andrew Quarles still has a job. So Andrew Quarles gets into a disagreement with some women in a parking garage. Not even disagreement. The way the police report puts it and the way the women put it was he tried to approach them. They weren't trying to hear it. He busts off 2 shots. Right. He busts off 2 shots. And then tried to hide, and the police caught him, and they found his gun in a potted plant. Now, look, I'm not judging him for the fact that he tried to hide the gun in a potted plant, because I don't know where else you hide a gun in a parking garage, especially if you hope by the time the night's over to go back and get your gun. Right? And that's the thing. When people start hiding things like that, always remember they're trying to hide them in such a way that allows them to reclaim the property. Like, you don't want to hide it too good. But it's a lot going on there. But anyway, dude still got a job. I didn't know he was that good. Like, you busted, like, for this league that has now put forth its, you know, they had their road to Damascus moment about violence against women, but a dude busting off shots in a parking garage because somebody turned down his advance, then, okay, guess it's not for me to understand. Well, that's that guy's This Time in Miami story. Jason Pierre-Paul's this one time in Miami story was about him shooting off fireworks. I saw a headline on ESPN.com about this, though, that made me realize, yo, what are we doing here? And I saw Adam Schefter tweet about this earlier today. And the headline is, Cops Drop JPP Investigation Due to Jurisdiction. So apparently the police in Coral Springs, Florida, where this happened, we're going to investigate it to make sure that nothing criminal had happened. And then Adam Schefter says that with something criminal happening, that Jason Pierre-Paul then could have been subject to the NFL's conduct policy. I'm like, damn, the dude almost blew his hand off with a firework, and we're talking about the conduct policy? Like, are you telling me that that's not its own punishment? You got to admit, right? Like, if the dude blew his hand off, okay? If the dude blew his hand off, and then you're coming in like, well, I think this is probably a conduct policy violation. Yo, man, that'd be real whack, okay? Like, they got to have more crime to fight than to be trying to investigate what happened with Jason Pierre-Paul and these fireworks. Like, was Jason Pierre-Paul pressing charges against himself? Now, what they were going to get him for was criminal fireworks possession, because apparently you're not supposed to have fireworks other than a sparkler without a permit. And hey, maybe Jason Pierre-Paul needed to take the test to get the permit. I have no idea. But I feel like if after the 4th of July you're like, yo, we need to go investigate and make sure those fireworks were operated legally, y'all are tripping. Like, come on, somebody's got to cut this dude a little bit of slack, man. Damn. Now, beyond that, do you see the game that Jason Pierre-Paul seems to be playing? The Giants want to come check out his hand. They can't seem to catch up with Jason Pierre-Paul. Adam Schefter, citing him again, he says that Giants officials have been in South Florida since Monday. They can't catch up with Jason Pierre-Paul. Now, I've contended that if they can't catch up with him, then his hand must be really messed up. Because I would think that if you are him, and there has been word out that you might have blown fingers off and stuff like that, and nobody knows what's true because nobody that matters seems to have seen his hand. But I would think that if you were him in the situation that he's in and the money that he's going to try to get in the not too distant future, I would have thought that if his hand was okay, he'd be the first person out here telling the world, no, I'm good. My hand is here and I'm ready to count some money. Like, that would have been my thought. Except, do you think that Jason Pierre-Paul could play a game of chicken with the Giants to get them to say that he's got this non-football injury, and thereby they're pulling back the franchise tender, which, if I'm not mistaken, would then make Jason Pierre-Paul a free agent? Hey, man, just because you have stumbled upon a hardship doesn't mean it's not your chance to go somewhere with it, right? We talked about this with Doc Rivers last night, man. Yesterday, Doc Rivers, the Donald Sterling situation happened. That was real tragic for the NBA. Racism hurts everybody. You know, all that stuff, right? Doc Rivers parlayed that into turning the $21 million, the 3 years and $21 million left on his contract into 5 years and 50. Because sometimes hard times can be your best friend. Sometimes you just got to capitalize upon them. If Jason Pierre-Paul only, barely hurt his hand, just, kind of hurt his hand, and was able to parlay that into free agency, that would be pretty impressive. It would. And if that's his play, I would then assume that his hand is probably all right, because he doesn't want to go see these teams with the messed up hand. I would think that's probably right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is interesting. When it was simply a story about him injuring himself, it was kind of unfortunate, and I really felt bad for him. It's not like the dude wanted to blow his own hand off or whatever happened to him. I felt bad for him. But hey, man, if he can parlay a really bad mistake while shooting off his own fireworks into free agency, he's a magician. I would also like to give a public service announcement right fast on the topic of fireworks. Not really a public service announcement, but I noticed something, all right? So I was talking today about the firework thing with my buddy J.A. Adonde, And J.A. was saying that once you are like Jason Pierre-Paul and you got that kind of money, you need to hire somebody to shoot your fireworks off for you. And I was like, do you know how citified you sound right now? Like, why would I want to get somebody else to shoot off my fireworks? The whole point of being country and getting fireworks is to shoot your fireworks off yourself. That's why you get them. Like, if I was going to get somebody else to shoot off my fireworks, I'd go to, like, the big firework thing at the park with all the people. No, he wanted to shoot off his own fireworks. Like, I feel like you guys from the city don't understand that. Round these parts, down south, people like shooting off their own fireworks. That's how it goes. I mean, it worked out bad, but you don't pay somebody to come shoot off your fireworks. Think about that. That even sounds like poor sexual innuendo. You don't pay somebody for that. It's against the rules. Respect the game.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Bomani.
All guests join us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, including our next guest. He covers the San Antonio Spurs for ESPN.com after spending many years covering the NFL. He's also from Texas, so this is going to be the best segment you hear on radio today. His name is Mike Wright. Mike, what's going on?
Not much, man. It's about time you got me on the show, man.
Hey, man, it's tricky. I tried to get you on before, but you were moving, and then the Spurs lost, and then, everything changed.
Yeah, you went in. You just were not interested anymore when the Spurs lost. I get it though. I get it. It's
but
cool,
we back down. The Spurs out here got David West passing up 12, giving up 12 mil, winding up signing for one with the Spurs.
You know what? That shocked me, man, because I'm like, we always talk about, like, in pro sports. I've covered the NFL the last 10 years, and in pro sports we always say it's all about the money. It's all about the money. And look, if I'm David West, I got a hard time walking away from that 12 mil to take 1.5. I mean, so, I'm interested to know what the pitch was, what he talked to Pop about, what he talked to whoever in the Spurs organization, because whatever they said definitely lured him to come out here. And it's shocking. I mean, I think that at the end of the season, we were thinking, okay, or at least I was, is that, okay, I'm just now starting to cover the Spurs, so I'm about to cover the Spurs, the demise of a dynasty. And it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. It looks like they've pretty much reloaded now. They've got to get some depth guys and stuff like that. But, man, I think the Spurs are right in the mix for, another championship.
Well, how many minutes are there really for David West, though? Because he would be the other power forward that they signed this offseason.
That's a good question, but think about this. I mean, they lost. I mean, like, basically, okay, you go get David West and you get LaMarcus Aldridge, but you lost 4 guys. I mean, and they lost all guys that actually played games. They traded Thiago Splitter to Atlanta. Corey Joseph went to Toronto. Marco Bellinelli, Aaron Baines, and you're looking at a guy like Baines and Splitter. Those are guys that can come in and kind of take some of those minutes away from a guy like Tim Duncan, like just your older bigs. That you can kind of spell them a little bit, and so they can have more energy as the season progresses. So to me, I still think you still got to add some more depth. That's the biggest issue I see with the Spurs at this point right now.
All right, we're talking to Mike Wright. Check him out at ESPN.com, covering the San Antonio Spurs. A question I've had about the Spurs that I don't hear that many people talk about when we talk about the team getting older. And, some guys are getting older. Kawhi Leonard, obviously. I mean, everybody's getting older. But Kawhi Leonard, obviously, is still young. But Tony Parker is 33 and doesn't get to the basket quite like he used to. Is there any concern about him?
You know what? I would think there is. And that's what, when I talk about depth, that's what I'm looking at here. I mean, the only legit backup you got at that point spot is Patty Mills. And, I mean, he's been pretty capable, but there's been times where he hasn't necessarily been on point. And think about this. I mean, I want to say 2010, the 2010-2011 season was the last one that Tony Parker actually played 70 games or more. So to me, that's an issue. I mean, you go back to the playoffs in that first round against the Clippers, he was hobbled with all kinds of injuries. He had an ankle, I think. I want to say like he had a groin problem, and so he was beat up. And so to me, I think that is probably the next order of business for the Spurs. They've got to go get a legit backup point guard.
Well, do you have any concern that Tim Duncan and LaMarcus Aldridge do a lot of the same things?
I do, but I don't. I do, but I don't, because I think that when you have Tim Duncan and LaMarcus Aldridge in your starting lineup, I think you can be a lot more versatile. I mean, you got guys that can actually run. And look, Tim Duncan, as old as he's getting, he hasn't fallen off. I mean, he put up some pretty good numbers last year. And, yes, you're right. They do a lot of the same things, but I don't see how there's a problem with having two Tim Duncans or two LaMarcus Aldridges on the floor. I really don't.
Hey, I hadn't quite thought about it that way, but well, you put it in that way. We got two Tim Duncans. What's the issue? Good point.
Yeah, what's the problem? Yeah.
We're talking to Mike Wright of ESPN.com. Now, you mentioned something I thought was interesting. Hey, you spent all those years covering the NFL, and you have to get the money when you're in the NFL. How crazy is it for you to be around like Tim Duncan, who has just repeatedly said, nah, you can go ahead and pay me less than I'm worth. It's no big deal. I'll take it. I'm fine here. Like, how shocking is that for you to observe in person?
Man, you know what? It's very shocking, because it's not just Tim Duncan. I mean, I think that the Spurs has kind of developed a whole culture of sacrifice for the greater good. I mean, seriously. I mean, not only is Tim Duncan taking less, Manu Ginobili's going to take less. Danny Green, he just got his new deal, and he took less, I'm sure, than he probably could have gotten out on the market, because he's one of the best 3-and-D guys in the league. So, to me, that whole culture is built on that, and that's a big reason why they've been so successful. And I think that the culture they built here has kind of set them up to be successful over the long haul, because, think about like David West. You bring a guy in like David West. I mean, he is one of those veteran guys, been there, done that, seen it all. And, okay, you got Manu Ginobili, you got Tony Parker, Tim Duncan. You got all these guys that have, that they helped to establish that culture that San Antonio has already pretty much put into place. They just kind of carry the torch and just move it on to the next group of guys coming in. And so to me, it's a organizational culture, and I think it's one of the best run organizations in the league.
It's interesting you mentioned Danny Green, because when Danny Green first signed that deal for 4 years for $45 million, we didn't think that much of it. That's before some of these other deals for these guys we'd never heard of started rolling in. I hope Danny Green is happy, because I don't know what Chris Middleton looks like, but he got 70.
He did, but he like I said, he gives them some versatility, and you put him next to Kawhi Leonard, man. I mean, he's not necessarily, a guy that's going to create and score that way, but, man, you leave him out there on that arc, it's bottom. He's going to tear you up, and then he can play some defense. I mean, look at how he played defense on Chris Paul. Even though Chris Paul hit that shot in Game 7, man, he did a good job playing defense against him.
All right, talking to Mike Wright of ESPN.com, covering the San Antonio Spurs. Where do you think they stack up in the West? I mean, it's way early, but it's still a question.
The West is real, though, man. The West is real nowadays, isn't it? I mean, not that it hadn't been before, but it just shocked me how everybody just pretty much reloaded. But no, I think they're right up there, right up there in the thick of it. I mean, like I said, think about it, man. Your starting lineup is Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, LaMarcus Aldridge, Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard. That's pretty nasty, man. And if you can have a little depth behind that, and you know how it goes, man, it's with any sport. I don't care if it's Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA. You still got to have a little luck. And, you're talking about a few guys on the Spurs roster that are a little long in the tooth, so to speak. So you're going to have some luck with them in terms of their health and things like that, and you're going to have some depth guys that can kind of step up when those guys are down or when you need to spell them. And so, I'm not saying that they've got a clear path to another NBA championship, but, man, they sure do have a good shot at it, and I think they're just as good as any team in the West.
Michael Wright, ESPN.com, covered the San Antonio Spurs. You know when the season comes, we're going to have to do this a lot, though, right? Like this is what it's going to be. Like, you are now a San Antonio emissary.
About time, you wasn't calling me when I was in Chicago, and I actually listened to the show quite a bit back then. You was calling cats from Chicago.
Oh man, but they were talking about the Bulls. You was with the
Bears.
Hood cats.
No, it wasn't hood. It wasn't Bulls reporters. I'm talking about you was calling cats from the hood. And just talking about different things.
Oh yeah. I hated that you moved before you could meet my man Mike. Like, if you met Mike Hitman, you'd understand the hood got a call, but we're going to do this, man. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, my man.
Bomani.
I had not heard of DeAndre Johnson until very recently. DeAndre Johnson was a quarterback for Florida State, and DeAndre Johnson got put off the team for striking a woman in a bar. So how exactly do we do this, right? And this I'm talking about is the decisions we make about which stories like these are going to become a thing. Now, part of why this one became a big thing, of course, is the release of video. Another part of what happened here is there's nothing else going on. Like, I don't think this rises to the top of our stack on a Monday or Tuesday after a bunch of NFL action. It probably doesn't happen. Like it or not, our decisions about what to put forth in the media are not coming, like, this is not the thought process of a public trust. This is a capitalist thought process. And we're going to give what we think people are going to pay the most attention to. And people will pay more attention to football games than they'll pay attention to that, right? So if that had happened, I'd say in September on a Monday and that comes out, we're not talking about this nationally. We are talking about it now. Now, my question about whether or not we should talk about it nationally is not a question of whether or not what Johnson did was defensible. What he did was not. Now, a lot of people watched that video, and I think they saw something defensible. If you have not seen the video, go check it out. It's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to watch, but I do think if you plan on having conversations with people about what happened in this video, you should probably watch it, right? So I had a lot of people who saw that video, and the way I saw it in the video, and if I have it wrong, you let me know, but I just got to relay this across on the radio. There is a disagreement between Johnson and a woman at the bar. They are talking. They are going back and forth. She balled her fist up, and she raised her fist. He grabbed her wrist. I can't tell if she pushes him off or whatever. He punches her in the face, and that's the end of the encounter. Now, the only part of real relevance as far as whether or not that dude was going to stay a student at Florida State or whether he was going to be on the team was, and then he hit her in the face. Like, once that happens, that's it. A lot of dudes hit me up about, well, what about equality? So you saying that if a woman pushes a dude off, hits a dude like that he can't hit her back? Yes. That's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to, argue with you about how much sense it makes. I'm not trying. No, that's how it goes. Boom. That's it. You hit a woman in the face in a bar, you're not going to be on the team anymore. And the reason for it is there is no room for nuance. The reason that there's no room for nuance is men who are the privileged class in these discussions have abused any right to nuance. They have abused any right to be like, man, but you didn't see this other No, man, this is just what it is. The mistake that he made, like the first mistake before he wound up hitting her in the face, but the one that I could comfortably call a mistake, if that situation was escalating to the point where she balled her fist and he found it necessary to grab her wrist with her fist balled up, you got to go home. Like, that's it. Like, that was your moment right there. Like, that was your attempt to defuse the situation if you're DeAndre Jordan, and you needed to defuse that situation by going home. That's not what he did. It kept going. So I don't really want to hear that much about what she said to him. I don't want to hear that much about what happened first. That right there is what it's got to be. Period. That's what it's got to be. And I think that everybody has to understand and realize this, that when it comes to issues of violence of men against women, and I'm going myself to start discussing this in terms of violence of men perpetrated upon women, simply because domestic violence, making this a catch-all of domestic violence is how you wind up with these idiots trying to equate what went on with Hope Solo to what happened with Ray Rice. Like, they're not the same thing. We have a larger societal issue with men violently exploiting women in various ways. And yes, we will focus on that more than the fact that that woman hit that dude first. That's what it's going to be, right? You may want to have a separate discussion about that, but we ain't really going to have it on this radio show. We sure not going to have it on television. No, sir. Hey, you want to talk to me about that when nobody's around? I'll listen to you, but I'm not listening to you here. This is what it's got to be. The one thing I wonder, though, and this I do find to be interesting, Mike Florio of ProFootballTalk.com did a post about DeAndre Johnson where he said that DeAndre Johnson will probably never play in the NFL again. I mean, again, what am I talking about? He's never played. Said that he'll probably never play in the NFL. Then this post-Ray Rice universe, with there being this videotape of him doing this, that he'll probably never play in the NFL. Now, I don't know if the dude was going to be good enough to play in the NFL. However, I don't think that it requires any logical or moral gymnastics to say that while I absolutely think that Florida State should have sent him packing for what he did, I am not at all comfortable with this idea that that should end what could be an NFL career. I don't think that. Like, I didn't think that about Ray Rice either. And I think that what ended Ray Rice's career was not that. What ended Ray Rice's career was the fact that Ray Rice averaged 3.2 yards per carry the year before. Like, if Ray Rice could still run, if Ray Rice were closer to 20 than he is to 30, Ray Rice would be on somebody's team. He would. And I wouldn't have a problem with it. Like, I am horribly uncomfortable with the overcompensation that we've made on these matters as it relates to punishment, right? So, yeah, there's going to be some people that jump up on something like this and try to say, well, he hit her first and da-da-da. And I do believe that there's a proper overcompensation in not listening to all these excuses on that side. Like, I think there's something to that. I do not think, though, that the compensation on the other side is to say, okay, now you can never have anything in life that somebody else might want. Because that's what it is. Like, I don't think anybody would be saying, I don't think DeAndre Jordan should ever be allowed to be a garbage man again. Garbage man is a noble profession. No. We only, permanently want to bar people from these offenses from jobs that we ourselves would like to do. The things that we deem as privileges. You know what I mean? Privileges. I'm sorry, I said I meant to say DeAndre Johnson. I said DeAndre Jordan. This is a rough week for DeAndre Jordan. He was in the news so much, and we keep throwing his name in this story that he wants no parts of. But no, I don't think that this should be the end of this dude's everything. I don't. I think he'll probably wind up somewhere else playing college football, and I won't have a problem with that. I won't wind up in some long discussion about they'll put winning before everything else. No. I just don't think that this is one of those situations that should be the end. I just don't. I think a lot of people are going to disagree with me about that one. I don't know, really if people have thought so much about it. I think that we're just on a default if-then sort of thing. If this happens, then he should never get to play again. Nah, I don't feel like that. And saying something is indefensible is not the same thing as saying somebody should pay for it forever. And so with this dude, I think that getting put out of school is a hell of a payment that you have to deal with. I think all the things that come with that are pretty sick. That's a punishment. I don't necessarily think that every other school in America has to then uphold that punishment. So it'll be interesting to see how this winds up going. But, like, when I read somebody say he'll probably never play in the NFL again, that doesn't make the NFL seem more impressive to me. No, I'm not here for that. I just think that that's a problem.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt. Frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
Right now from the Tallahassee Democrat, covering Florida State, we've got Corey Clark. Corey, what's going on?
What's up, Bomani? How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm doing all right. Thanks so much for coming on the show. And we were talking about the DeAndre Johnson situation. I have to stop calling him DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Johnson situation at Florida State. So the video comes out yesterday. Florida State wound up making a decision. Did they know of the existence of the video before yesterday?
Oh, they definitely knew there was a video. It was actually in the police report. The police report said it corroborated. The police officers watched the video, and it corroborated the victim's statement. So they knew there was a video. Now, what's questionable, and they say they hadn't seen the video until it was on our site on Monday. And then it was on our site Monday around 2. By 9 o'clock, he was off the team. So that kind of goes with their theory that, or with what they said, that they hadn't seen the video until it was on our site.
Well, I imagine this one had to be a no-brainer for Florida State. I think people have a perception right now that it's a bit of a renegade program, but do you think that there was any doubt that if they had known this would happen, that they would have put him off the team?
Oh, no. Once anybody sees that video, especially with the toxicity that's around Florida State the last 2 years, there's no way Jimbo Fisher can have a kid on his roster that has that video. It just can't happen. And yeah, I mean, Florida State's portrayed as basically like Oklahoma in the mid '80s, and it's kind of unfair in the sense that so much of that centers around the quarterback that just left, and the national attention and scrutiny that he had. He was just absolutely vilified. But Jimbo's kicked off guys before. It's not like, Greg Dipp, 2013 was kicked off, Nigel Carr. This stuff has happened. So I think it was just a matter of time with DeAndre Johnson. Once they saw that video, there's no way you can keep that kid on your team.
All right, talking to Corey Clark of the Tallahassee Democrat. And I think one tricky thing, you correct me if I'm wrong here, in the ways that people perceive the way Florida State handled Jameis Winston, is that Jimbo Fisher absolutely believed that he was innocent of the crime that he was accused of, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, without a doubt, 100% believed that he was innocent. So, people, he got so vilified again, Jimbo did, for sticking up for Jameis. Well, he believed Jameis. Some people are cynical. Some people think he's foolish for that. But he 100% from the start, from the jump, believed that Jameis Winston was innocent. So that's why he played him.
Well, is there any long-run concern that Florida State's program has with the image that they have right now?
I mean, there has to be a little bit, right? I mean, they've just been raked over the coals, literally for, 21 months, ever since TMZ put out the thing about Jameis, that Wednesday afternoon in the fall. It's been everybody's been attacking Florida State, and yeah, I think they do worry a bit about the reputation. I think a lot, many people, administrators, and certainly most of the fans think that they've been unfairly criticized. But it is what it is. They're the poster child right now for a football town mentality, where it's a win at all cost mentality. And that's what they've had to live with for the last 2 years. Whether it's fair or not, I do know that they worry about their reputation.
All right, talking to Corey Clark of the Tallahassee Democrat. One thing I found to be interesting about this case, though, is that when we start hearing about DeAndre Johnson's lawyer, it is the Baez gentleman who represented Casey Anthony. Is there any particular reason he didn't go to Tim Jansen, who appears to be on speed dial number one when a Florida State athlete gets arrested?
I don't know, man. I would think, talk about, representing vilified people. I would think because he's not on the team anymore would be my guess. I mean, Tim Jansen's a guy that represents players that are still going to be a part of the program. When they're done, maybe he doesn't have anything to do with them. I don't know. But, yeah, it was that was interesting. That was kind of eye-opening when we saw that it was Baez that was his attorney.
Well, let me ask this. We're talking to Corey Clark of the Tallahassee Democrat, because most of us don't know too much about DeAndre Johnson. Was this something that the program found to be surprising, the allegation in the first place?
Oh, yeah, definitely, for sure. I think they, talking to Jimbo about him,
because he was a freshman last year. He was an early enrollee, so he was a freshman in the spring. And we talked to Jimbo a little bit about him, and he told us he was a good guy. He was a good student, a very good player. And look, we don't know if this guy was ever going to play football at Florida State, but he had a chance. I mean, he was a talented kid. He was Mr. Football. He was a pretty big deal. And they, like I said, that video shows up at 2:00 on our site or 1:30 or whatever it was. By the end of the night, he's off the team. But no, I think people were stunned, genuinely stunned when they saw that video. And it's such a visceral thing to see too. Everybody was stunned, I would imagine, when they see that thing.
Well, let me ask this, because I think it's a question that people often have when someone gets put off the team. There's the question about the utility of the player. Was Florida State counting on him this year?
No. They have Golson coming in. They have Golson that's going to start most likely unless somehow McGuire beats him out. And then, to be honest with you, they have Malik Henry, who's considered one of the best quarterbacks in the country, coming in next year's class. So it was going to be a tiny window for DeAndre Johnson to get playing time anyway. It looks like. But, again, you never know. The Malik Henry kid might not turn out to be anything, and DeAndre Johnson might have been a great quarterback at Florida State. We don't know. But, no, for 2015, it was going to be a redshirt year. That's why, there was talk at the beginning maybe they'll suspend him for the year like Oklahoma did with the Mixon kid who did basically the same thing, but that video never came out for whatever reason. But you couldn't suspend this kid. That's just such a hollow penalty because he was going to be redshirted anyway.
All right, we're talking to Corey Clark of the Tallahassee Democrat. What's your general read on this team? In part, just kind of the quality of how good they could be this year, but also kind of the guys on the team as we talk about what the image of the program is.
Yeah, that's so hard to say. I mean, when I talk to the guys, they all seem like good dudes. They're easy to talk to, smart kids. I think on the football field, I think they have a chance to win 10 games. I mean, Golson's kind of a wild card, right? Like, we watched him last year. He could throw 4 interceptions, and then he could also lead them to 45, 50 points. And he was great at dope in the game they lost on the final play against Florida State last year. So I think Golson's kind of a wild card, man. And, Dalvin Cook's a special running back. Jalen Ramsey might be one of the best defensive players in the country. There's talent there, but man, you don't lose 11 guys get drafted, including the number 1 overall pick. I just don't see how you can win 11, 12, 13 games again when you lose that much talent. I think, and most people think, Florida State fans and maybe the coaching staff, they wouldn't say it publicly, probably a year away from being another dominant Florida State football team.
All right, you mentioned that a lot of the perception of the program had to do with Jameis Winston, and Jameis Winston is not there. What is the tenor of the program around with relation to that? Because I know, like, when you were around Auburn after Cam Newton left, it was kind of like an exhale for everybody.
Oh, yeah, that's the perfect word. It is an exhale. And I joked, and when there was still talk that Jameis might come back for his junior year, I always joke, man, I don't think Florida State fans even want that to happen. I mean, they were just so besieged with all the stories for 21 months, like I said. I think there is a serious exhale factor. And look, now the New York Times isn't going to be in Tallahassee anymore. They're not going to camp out in an apartment anymore looking for stuff because the big guy, the star, is gone. He's off to the NFL. So I think just Florida State fans, obviously they would want number 5 leading the team again this year. But I don't think they're too unhappy that he's at Tampa now, and then they can move on. They appreciated certainly the 29 wins in a row, but they can move on and not have to worry about as much the perception of the program from the outside.
All right, last question for Corey Clark of the Tallahassee Democrat. We talked a little bit earlier about Jimbo Fisher and his defense of Jameis because he believed that Jameis was innocent. That had a positive effect in recruiting, though, didn't I? Recall seeing that there were recruits who said that one thing they liked about Florida State was the way that Jimbo handled that.
Yeah, there was a particular press conference where Jimbo just stood up. He'd been asked another question, a couple of questions about it, and just flat out said, look, there was no crime. There's no victim because there's not a crime. And he took a lot of heat for that, obviously, nationally with the media. But when people talk to recruits' parents and recruits, man, that did say a lot because he stood by the guy. He stood by his guy. He didn't bow down to public pressure. He believed in his guy. Now, a cynic might say, yeah, he believed in the Heisman Trophy winner, but he believed in his guy, and he stood up for him. And parents and high school students and high school recruits certainly noticed that, man. Yeah, that definitely played a big role on the recruiting trail, and it will in the foreseeable future.
All right, Corey Clark of the Tallahassee Democrat. You made a mistake, though, man. You're such a good guest on here tonight that you basically signed yourself up for a lot more appearances on the Right Time once the season starts. Hope you know that.
Let's do it, baby. Let's do it. I'm all aboard.
All right, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Bomani. I appreciate it, man.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Weeknights from 9 to 11 Eastern or on demand at ESPNradio.com.